All right, well, thank you for doing this.
Of course.
So let's jump straight into it. One of the biggest things I know about you is that you are a futurist. So what is a futurist?
Actually, well, I mean, yeah, I'm a futurist, but it's something I didn't choose. People kind of started calling me one. But basically, I try to understand the future from different angles. My background is in arts, so actually I have an artist education, but I've started a couple of companies. I've been in Silicon Valley, I work in Myanmar, so that has given me kind of different approaches. I can think how an artist would kind of approach it. I can also approach it as a businessman or entrepreneur, and so on. So I think that has given me some tools to try to understand this complex, uncertain future that is going to be something that probably we cannot even imagine about. So I try to understand the future.
Okay, very good. So how did you go from an interest in music to the Singularity University in the States? How'd that happen?
Yeah, so, well, I never planned or thought that I would become an entrepreneur. I loved music, I studied composition, I was fascinated with music theory, and I invented this tool just for myself. And at some point it started helping others as well. We started a company and that became my path. And along the way, after one presentation, there was a lady in the audience who said that there's this institution in the US that is teaching exponential technologies, and you might be a good fit. So just go and Google it, which I did. But I was underage, actually. I was too young to apply, but the deadline was like 2 weeks after my birthday. So I applied, I got in, and they completely brainwashed me with this kind of, will to change the world and, see the big picture and kind of disrupt everything. And it was very important because it opened my eyes. And we co-founded the nonprofit that later took me to Myanmar. So it was very important, but it was a big leap, I have to say, from going from a musician into a kind of technology bubble and really changing the world.
Okay, wow. So I got some interesting ones for you. Are robots eventually going to overtake our jobs?
Well, this is something I would like to cover, like with a couple of lectures. Like it's a big question.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be afraid of that. I mean, obviously technology should take our job, like that's the whole point. We as humans are very limited with our capabilities, like our eyes cannot see in the stars, so we make telescopes, and we cannot see in the cell level, so we make microscopes. So in a way, technology is designed to be better than us. But in the long run, our work is still, it comes from problems, right? And problems globally it's a good resource. We won't get rid of that. Like we will have work and jobs, but they might be kind of different problems that we're dealing with in 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
So I will be afraid of not having a job, or we have to maybe change what we do, but still it's nothing I would be afraid of. The thing is, yes, robots should take our jobs, but it's not like this dystopian image that many of us have that, we are going to just lose the battle to them.
Yeah.
So I think they're helping us to become more human. They're helping us to kind of concentrate on what really matters. I think the next revolution would be human revolution, because the more technological we'll become, the more humane we should also become. So I think we are on the right track.
Okay. I got a question from one of our community members, Sinan Kaplan. He said, should we start giving identity to robots or encode identity into robots? More specifically, do robots need to know who they are and where they come from?
Well, can a robot be emotional or responsive, or can they have a consciousness? I would say no, because we cannot even understand what our own consciousness is made of. So we cannot code or give a robot kind of identity, so to say, a consciousness. But the thing is, of course, we can create stores and give them stores, but they cannot own it the same way.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have childhoods, they don't have background, they cannot tell why they did certain things. Like we can talk about our motivation, our dreams, and we can make generalizations about things, but robots only have the information they were given, or they got. So I wouldn't be, I don't see necessarily why we would want to do that, because like we have to remember intelligence is like we have 9 different types of intelligence. And if we say robots are better than humans or they're smarter or whatever, we have to be specific, like logically faster or mathematically more capable or musically, more efficient or whatever it is. But we cannot just make a generalization and say they are better than us. So in this way, the comparison between humans and robots somehow or sometimes it's too harsh. And I think here, when we think about identity and robots together, we're kind of forcing 2 things that might not even be meant to be together. So I wouldn't necessarily see how it would kind of add any value. We can give them stories, but they cannot be kind of their own entities, like own an identity.
Okay. Simo Kekkalainen asked, as a young person, how are you able to break through in the public speaking scene?
Well, I think rather than thinking I'm going to become a public speaker, it would be important to find what is important, what I really care about. I mean, there are a lot of people who think like, I want to be an entrepreneur because there's a title, like it's cool. And then they think, so what should I do? So I wouldn't say that public speaking is something like one should really aim at, like not the title, but rather what is it that you want to share? Like
so your purpose.
Yeah, what do you have that only you can give? Like what is unique? Why do they need to care? Why does it matter? So public speaking kind of comes, it's a side product. Like it doesn't have to be public speaking. It can be another kind of company that you found, for example. But I think it's most important to kind of start with like what I want to achieve with this thing. Like you have to have some kind of message that tilts the world to a better place.
Okay, going on that, one of our community members asked, what are your next goals professionally?
Well, I just signed a deal with the National Radio to produce a summer kind of program. So 10 hours.
On that.
Well, thanks. Summer, 10 hours monologue.
Oh, okay.
So that's a lot. I mean, 10 different.
Not in one go.
Yeah, sure. But, so that's something I'm very excited about because that, again, is scalable. I can give a talk and have many people listen to it from wherever they are. But the next thing after that is that my book is going to be published in the US in the fall. And it's been translated to Korean and Turk and, they're like, let's see where it goes. But the US is a big one. So I'm really looking forward to it. Like, I think it's very, like, I'm very humbled to see that these themes, these topics that I write and talk about resonate even on this other side of the world. So it's not specific, so to say, to only like what we experience here, but rather it's something many of us are battling with.
Okay. Alexandra also asks, how did moving to an international scene to Finland change your perspective and what are your biggest learning lessons?
Well, it obviously helps if you have experience from different fields or different kind of places. Like for me, when I was in Silicon Valley, I experienced this one end of the spectrum, like very, like over there. Myanmar, it's a developing nation, so it was the other end of the spectrum. When I came to Finland, Finland was somewhere in between, right? So I was able to take key lessons from both and try to kind of reflect, what does it really mean for all of us here right now? So what can we learn from these and these? So if you want to make it internationally, I think it would be good to kind of provide or combine something that only you have. It has to be special. Like you cannot just go on stage and tell what everybody already knows. Like it has to have an edge. So how do you make it personal? How do you make it relevant? How do you make it like interesting? There's so much noise happening. Like everybody has something to say. So what do you have that I cannot get from Google? Like that's essentially the question. Like why would I have you or not just?
That's a great question.
Right.
What do you have that Google doesn't have?
So as an example, Google cannot look me into the eye and touch me on the shoulder or doesn't have a body language or like doesn't breathe. And like we have to bring these elements to it as well. Not just the information and the data that Google can give us, but also like the whole thing. How do you present? What messages do you send even without saying anything? Like, who are you? What's the whole product?
Okay. Yeah, sounds fantastic to me. Sami Vani asked, what's your best tip to overcome fear?
Curiosity.
Curiosity helps overcome fear?
Yeah. I mean, I think many times when I've done something like courageous, so to say, or I've just taken a step forward, it hasn't happened because I was like super courageous. Like, I don't think anybody even thinks like, oh, I'm the one who has the most courage, but rather I've been curious, and that has kind of helped me take the step. Like, I want to know how, or I want to know what happens next, or where this will go. So if you're not quite sure, like, curiosity helps. And also I would say, if we wait for the moment that we feel like, okay, now it's time, now I'm ready, we will never do anything. Like, we have to kind of take the leap of faith. At some point, it's like, well, you know, let's see where it goes. Like, Roosevelt has this wonderful quote about decision making. Okay. He said that if, like, the best thing you can do about, like, the best thing you can do when making a decision is that you make the right decision, right? The second best thing what you can do is you make the wrong decision. But the worst thing you can ever do is that you don't make a decision at all, because then you just postpone it. So even if you make the wrong decision, it kind of gets you started. You learn something from it. You're on a path to something. But if you just kind of put it later, the process doesn't even start. So at some point, just gotta have a go.
Do you have one tip of advice you would give for someone who's aspiring to become a public speaker?
One thing that is very difficult to disagree on, if I think of the situation where we have a speaker and audience, is of course stories and experiences. So that's kind of the safe option to get started. Like, that's not something that can there's no backlash, so to say, to this. So this would be kind of the easy way to get started. When you tell something that you have experienced or kind of lived through, you don't have to remember. Like, that's like, you don't have to, you just go there and be honest, right? So that would be kind of the easy step to just like get on the route. The thing is that the themes you start speaking with in the beginning won't be the ones that you end up speaking. Okay. So like, it's process. So it's more important just to kind of get out there.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah,
advice.
But in any case, I think it's always good to be able to argue against yourself. So don't go there kind of just giving the truth, but rather challenge yourself, challenge the audience, remember the shades of gray. Like, don't go there and think like, okay, I have the message for you, but rather like invite them and have a session together, kind of bring your human elements to it so that people see that, well, you're just one of us, because then the message goes through better. Okay. So
I love it.
Be human. Maybe that's the one.
Thank you so much again.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.